Good afternoon. Welcome to the U.S. Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs, Applicant Orientation for 84-325M, Preparation of Early Intervention, Special Education, and Related Services Personnel at Historically Black Colleges and Universities, Tribally Controlled Colleges and Universities, and other minority-serving institutions. My name is Sanyang An, one of the project officers at OSEP, and I am recording this webinar on behalf of the competition manager for this grant, Dr. Tracy Dixon. Next slide. The information I will present today is for guidance only and cannot replace the notice inviting applications. Please read the entire notice inviting applications, the instructions, and all other related statutes, regulations, and references. Also, for additional information related to submitting an application, please review the recorded webinar titled Applying for the Office of Special Education Programs Discretionary Grants. Next slide. The notice inviting applications for 84-325M was published in the Federal Register on December 7th, 2023. Applications are due no later than 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time on February 20th, 2024. Applications submitted after 11:59 p.m. Eastern Time will be ineligible for review and funding. Next slide, please. The application package contains the Dear Applicant letter, the notice inviting applications, the Federal Register notice, and the grants.gov system submission procedures and tips for applicants, the priority description and selection criteria, general information, and required forms. Required forms can be found on the grants.gov 84-325M listing. Next slide. The purpose of the 325M grant is to, first, increase the numbers of racially, ethnically, and linguistically diverse personnel, and two, to ensure that the personnel have the skills and knowledge that are scientifically based. This year, we have $7,250,000 available for the 325M grant, and this can fund up to 29 awards. Next slide. There are several important things to remember concerning the 325M grant eligibility and applications. If you are an applicant from a minority serving institution and plan to apply for both 325M and 325R, which is for related services personnel programs, you would need to submit a separate and different application for each priority. Next, the degree programs eligible for the 325M grant include bachelor's, certification, master's, education specialist, or clinical doctoral degree programs. In addition, there is no requirement for applicants to propose an interdisciplinary project for FY24 325M grant. However, projects can propose an interdisciplinary project that prepares scholars through a partnership between two or more disciplines. It could be special education or early intervention and one or more related services programs, or two or more related services combinations. Next slide. It is important to note the department's priority. This language is embedded throughout the NIA. The department places a high priority on increasing the number of personnel who provide services to children with disabilities, including the number of multilingual personnel and personnel from racially and ethnically diverse backgrounds. Next slide. The absolute priority of the 3 to 5M grant is the preparation of early intervention, special education, and related services personnel at HBCUs, TCCUs, and other MSIs. Again, the eligible degree programs include bachelor's, certification, master's, education specialist, or clinical doctoral degree levels. Next slide. For purposes of this priority, historically Black colleges and universities means colleges and universities that meet the criteria set out, Title 34, Section 608.2 in the Code of Federal Regulations. For purposes of this priority, tribally controlled colleges and universities has the meaning ascribed to it in Section 316B3 of the Higher Education Act of 1965. For purposes of this priority, minority serving institutions means an institution that is eligible to receive assistance under sections 316 through 320 of Part A of Title III, under Part B of Title III, or under Title V of Higher Education Act. For purposes of this priority, the department will use the FY 2023 eligibility matrix to determine MSI eligibility. Next slide. And when you refer to the 2023 eligibility matrix, you will see the following MSI designations in the Excel spreadsheet. Please look for your university listed in one of these tabs. Your university is ineligible to apply if you do not see your university listed in the spreadsheet. Next slide. For the purposes of this priority, related services include the following: speech-language pathology and audiology services, assistive technology services, sign language interpreting services, intervener services, psychological services, applied behavior analysis, physical therapy and occupational therapy, recreation, including therapeutic recreation, artistic and cultural services, including music, art, dance, and movement therapy, social work services, counseling services, including rehabilitation counseling, and orientation and mobility services. Next slide. I mentioned that certification programs are allowed to apply under 3 to 5M. By certification, we mean programs of study for individuals with bachelor's, master's, educational specialist, or clinical doctoral degrees that lead to licensure, endorsement, or certification from a state or national credentialing authority following completion of the degree program that qualifies graduates to teach or provide services to children with disabilities. Programs of study that lead to a certificate of completion awarded from an institution of higher education, but do not lead to licensure, endorsement, or certification from a state or national credentialing authority do not qualify. Next slide. There is one competitive preference in FY 24 325M. We will give 3 additional points to applicants that have not had an active discretionary grant under assistant listing numbers 84 320R, 84 325M, or 84 325K, funded in the last 5 years before the deadline date for submission of applications under this program, ALN 84 325M. Applicants are institutions of higher education, not a department or a program within an institution. Therefore, if your institution was awarded 3 to 5R, M, or K in the last 5 years, you would not be eligible for these competitive preference points. Also, a grant is considered active until the end of the grant funding period, including any extension period. Next slide. Again, eligible applicants are institutions of higher education or private nonprofit organization that houses a university early intervention, special education, or related services training program. Next, please. Under 3 to 5M, there are 2 focus areas A and B. Applicants can propose a project under focus area A, preparing personnel to serve infants, toddlers, and preschool age children with disabilities, or focus area B, preparing personnel to serve school age children with disabilities. And OSA may fund out of rank order applications to ensure that projects are funded across both focus area A and focus area B. Next slide. Okay. I want to emphasize this point here again. Applicants under this priority may not submit the same proposal under 3 to 5R, preparation of related services personnel serving children with disabilities who have high intensity needs, which was published on November 16, 2023. Applicants may submit substantively different proposals under 3 to 5R and 3 to 5M. The Office of Special Education Programs may fund applications out of rank order based on funding decisions across 3 to 5R, 3 to 5M in FY24 to ensure that similar personnel preparation projects are not funded within the same institution across the 3 to 5R and 3 to 5M competitions. Next slide. The 3 to 5M grant program defines a scholar as a student who is enrolled in a program that leads to certification, licensure, endorsement needed to serve IDA-eligible children with disabilities. Scholars are not those individuals pursuing degrees in general education or early childhood education. Upon graduation, scholars are expected to be able to be employed in a position that serves children with disabilities for a minimum of 51% of their time or caseload that meets fulfillment of service obligation requirements. You can find information about service obligation on the link you see in the slide, and it is important to understand these requirements before you apply. Next slide. A 3 to 5M application is funded up to $350,000 per year for 5 years. Funding for 5 years will not exceed $1,250,000. Over 5 years, 65% of the award at a minimum must be used for scholar support. Applicants may use up to the first 12 months of the performance period and up to $100,000 of the first budget period for planning. And applicants proposing to use year 1 for program development must ensure that 65% of the total award minus funds allocated for program development will be used for scholar support. And each budget year can be different amount, but not exceed $350,000 depending on the activities proposed. Next slide. And how the grant can support scholars. It is important to read the NIA to understand how you can design high quality scholar support for the project. Scholar support does not need to be uniform for all scholars and should be customized for individual scholars' needs. Scholar support should include considerations for all costs associated with the cost of attendance, even if that means enrolling fewer scholars. We want quality scholar support that will lead scholars to complete the programs. Some examples you can consider in designing scholar support include tuition and fees, student health insurance, allowance for books, materials, and supplies, an allowance for miscellaneous personal expenses, allowance for dependent care, such as childcare, an allowance for room and board, travel in conjunction with training or conference, and stipends to support scholars' completion of the program. And projections for scholar support also should consider tuition increase and cost of living. Next slide. Now I will talk about the application narrative and selection criteria, required project assurances, and general requirements. Again, it is critical to read the entire NIA, and this presentation cannot replace reading the NIA. Next. There are 5 areas of selection criteria we ask applicants to address in the application narrative. Those are significance of the project, quality of project services, quality of project personnel and quality of management plan, adequacy of resources, and quality of project evaluation. Next slide. Up to 10 points are available for the significance section. In determining the quality of this section, we will consider the following factors: how the project will address the need in the proposed preparation focus area to prepare personnel who are fully qualified to serve children with disabilities, and how the proposed project will increase the number of personnel in the proposed preparation focus area, and how the applicant has successfully graduated students in their program, including students with disabilities, multilingual students, and students who are from racially and ethnically diverse backgrounds, including data disaggregated by disability status, race, national origin, and primary languages, and the number of students who have graduated in the last five years. Next slide. The quality of project services, where you will describe the core components and foundation of the project. Up to 45 points are available for this section. If your project will have a planning year, this is where you will describe your planning activities. You should also describe how the project will help scholars build the necessary knowledge, skills, and competencies in this section. Next slide. Also, under quality of project services, please note that grant applicants should include plans that demonstrate how the project will engage in focused outreach and recruitment to increase the number of scholar applicants from groups that are traditionally underrepresented in the field, including scholar applicants with disabilities, multilingual applicants, and applicants from racially and ethnically diverse backgrounds. However, an important distinction here is that the selection criteria the grant applicant intends to use must ensure equal access and treatment of all scholar applicants seeking admission to the program, and must be consistent with applicable law, including federal civil rights law. Next slide. Up to 20 points are available for the quality of project personnel and management plan. In this section, we want to see how the project director and other key project personnel are qualified to prepare scholars in the project's preparation focus area, how the project director and other key project personnel will manage the components of the project, and whether the time commitments of the project director and other key personnel are adequate to meet the objectives of the proposed project. Next slide. Up to 10 points are available for the adequacy of the resources section. This section is where you can elaborate on your plans for scholar support, as well as the adequacy of your budget. Next slide. Lastly, up to 15 points are available for the project evaluation section. In this section, the applicant will describe how it will evaluate how well goals or objectives of the project have been met. The applicant will also describe how it will collect and analyze scholar data that demonstrates scholar progress. Scholars have obtained the knowledge, skills, and competencies set forth in the program. In this section, we want to know what data will be collected, how you plan to collect the data, when the data will be collected, and how the data will be analyzed to inform us on the overall quality of the project and scholar performance. Next slide. And please read the NIA for the required project assurances, including the service obligation requirements, an assurance that all the course syllabi will be provided if requested by OSEP, and the IDA statutory requirements. In the application, applicants are required to submit a table that lists the project's required coursework that includes the course title, brief description, learning goals, and relevant state or national professional organization personnel standards for each course, and 4 exemplar course syllabi required by the degree program that reflect evidence-based practices across various content areas. Next slide. Additional project assurances emphasize the 65% scholar support requirement. Also, please ensure that scholar support costs are not based on the condition that scholar works for the university. Applicants also should ensure that a revised budget will be submitted if the project plan for recruitment or enrollment changes. Next slide. Once funded, grantees are required to attend our annual project directors meeting in Washington. And funded projects are also required to participate in cross-project collaboration and learning opportunities. If you build a website for the project, please assure that it is accessible, and the funded projects must meet the annual scholar data reporting requirements as well. Next slide. Here you can learn more about the general requirements related to the employment of individuals with disabilities, engagement with individuals with disabilities, and equal access. Please read the general requirements in the NIA. Next slide. In this last section, I will talk about application submission tips and ineligible applications and share some helpful resources. Next. Applications must be submitted electronically. We do not take paper applications or applications via email. The due date is 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on February 20th, 2024. All application sections and attachments must be uploaded in PDF read-only format. Next slide. On our review panels, we often host reviewers with low vision or vision impairment. In the application package, there are specific instructions on how to make your application accessible. Please read the instructions very carefully to make your application accessible. You can find more information on how to prepare documents accessible on OSEP 508 Accessibility Resources page on the link provided in this slide. Next slide. Few final tips. Please register early on grants.gov. Also, make sure that your SAM registration is current and submit early. And lastly, verify that your submission went through. Next slide. And please follow the formatting requirements and recommendations. You can find this information in the application package. Next slide. Ineligible applications are duplicate applications and applications that did not meet the application deadline or applications that do not address the priority. Next slide. And I want to introduce some helpful resources. First, resource is the NIA. So please read the NIA in its entirety. You may use this pre-application webinar as an additional resource. We also developed a frequently asked questions and answers document and a brochure for the 3 to 5M grant program. The FAQs and brochures will be uploaded on this webinar page at a later date. OSEP has a discretionary grant program database, and you can also sort through previously funded 3 to 5 training grants in the database if you want to see some examples, synopsis of previously funded projects. Lastly, please take advantage of OSEP's 508 accessibility resources to make sure that your applications are accessible. Next page. Okay. This concludes the pre-application webinar for the FY24-84 3 to 5M grant. And if you have any questions, please email the competition manager, Dr. Tracy Dixon, at the email listed here. Thank you.